group of friends, Sarah, Mark, John, and Emily, eagerly packed their bags and set out for a long-awaited weekend getaway in a remote cabin nestled deep within the embrace of the whispering woods. The promise of an escape from the humdrum of city life beckoned to them like a siren's call, teasing their senses with the allure of tranquil seclusion and the camaraderie of shared laughter amidst nature's unspoiled beauty. Their journey, accompanied by the gentle hum of the car engine and the occasional burst of infectious laughter, seemed to stretch on endlessly, each passing mile dissolving into a blur of anticipation and excitement. Sarah, her eyes glimmering with unbridled enthusiasm, regaled the group with tales of past adventures, weaving a tapestry of shared memories that seemed to transcend the boundaries of time and space. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the wilderness, the towering canopy of ancient trees enveloped them in a comforting embrace, their rustling leaves whispering secrets of forgotten ages that were lost to the annals of time. The sunlight, filtered through the dense foliage, painted fleeting patterns of dappled gold and shadow upon the winding path that led them ever closer to their destination. The cabin, a rustic sanctuary nestled amidst a clearing of vibrant wildflowers and quivering grass, emerged in the distance, its weathered facade a testament to the enduring spirit of a bygone era. Sarah's infectious laughter reverberated through the tranquil air, punctuated by the excited chatter of her companions, as they eagerly laid claim to their temporary haven and reveled in the promise of shared moments that lay ahead. The sun, now poised at the cusp of the horizon, cast elongated shadows that stretched across the forest floor, painting an ethereal tablet that seemed to exist in a realm untouched by the passage of time. The scent of wood smoke and the distant melodies of woodland creatures blended seamlessly, infusing the air with an intangible sense of peace that enveloped the group in a comforting embrace. As the evening descended, Sarah and her friends huddled around the crackling fireplace, their faces illuminated by the warm, flickering glow that danced within the hearth. Tales of childhood escapades and daring exploits echoed through the cozy interior of the cabin, their laughter rising and falling in perfect harmony with the gentle crackle of the firewood that nestled within the flames. Sarah, her eyes alight with mischief, suggested a round of ghost stories to heighten the thrill of their woodland retreat, her voice carrying the tantalizing promise of spine-tingling chills that would evoke the very essence of the night itself. Her friends, their curiosity piqued by the prospect of shared frights, readily agreed, their expressions a mixture of trepidation and eager anticipation for the tales that were poised to unfold. With each passing moment, as the tales of restless spirits and haunted abodes wove their haunting melodies through the silent cabin, the atmosphere took on a subtle shift, the air seeming to thicken with a palpable sense of foreboding that encroached upon the edges of their tranquil sanctuary. The flames, their dance now cast in elongated shadows that clung to the walls like spectral fingers, seemed to flicker in response to the chilling whispers that seemed to weave themselves into the very fabric of their reality. Night fell, casting a blanket of velvety darkness over the cabin and the surrounding woods, its inky embrace punctuated by the distant twinkle of stars that seemed to gaze down upon the earth with an otherworldly curiosity. The crackling fire, now reduced to a gentle simmer, cast elongated shadows that danced along the walls, their movements a macabre waltz that seemed to defy the laws of nature. Sarah, her adventurous spirit undaunted by the encroaching darkness, ventured outside to retrieve a bundle of firewood, her footsteps creating soft imprints upon the dew-kissed earth that lay beneath her feet. The night air, cool and crisp against her skin, carried the faint scent of distant pine and the lingering traces of forgotten tales that seemed to echo through the very fabric of the forest. As she bent down to gather the firewood that lay scattered near the cabin's entrance, a faint rustling in the underbrush drew her attention, causing her to pause mid-motion. A fleeting sense of unease crept over her, its tendrils weaving themselves into the very sinews of her consciousness as she strained to discern the source of the unsettling disturbance that seemed to defy all logical explanation. A soft breeze, laden with the weight of whispered secrets, rustled through the trees, its plaintive sighs carrying with them an unspoken warning that seemed to reverberate through the very depths of Sarah's being. She brushed off the uncharacteristic sense of unease that threatened to take root within her, dismissing it as a figment of her overactive imagination, and resumed her task with a determined resolve that belied the trepidation that coiled within her chest. With each log carefully cradled in her arms, Sarah turned to make her way back to the cabin, only to find herself frozen in place, her eyes widening in disbelief as she beheld a fleeting figure that seemed to materialize from the ethereal mist that clung to the edges of the forest. The figure, shrouded in darkness and obscured by the swirling shadows that enveloped it, appeared to be a specter from a bygone era, its form insubstantial yet brimming with an unspoken malevolence that seeped through the very fabric of its being. A stifled gasp escaped Sarah's lips as she took an involuntary step backward, her pulse quickening in her chest as she struggled to make sense of the apparition that stood before her. The figure, its features obscured by the enveloping darkness, seemed to regard her with an intensity that transcended the boundaries of mortal comprehension, its presence imbued with an age-old hunger that seemed to yearn for something far beyond the realm of the living. In a sudden burst of movement, the figure dissipated into the surrounding shadows, leaving behind only a lingering chill that seemed to seep into Sarah's very bones, its icy touch serving as a stark reminder of the primal forces that lay dormant within the heart of the forest. With a trembling hand pressed to her chest, Sarah hastened her steps, her heart pounding in her ears as she sought the safety of the cabin's flickering light and the reassurance of her friends' familiar voices that echoed through the hollowed interior. As the night deepened, a palpable tension settled over the cabin, its once cozy interior now steeped in an unnerving silence that seemed to stretch endlessly into the enveloping darkness. The crackling fire, now reduced to a mere ember, cast elongated shadows that clung to the walls like phantom tendrils, their dance a testament to the encroaching malevolence that seemed to linger just beyond the edges of perception. Sarah, her earlier encounter with the mysterious figure still fresh in her mind, sought solace in the company of her friends, their camaraderie serving as a fragile shield against the encroaching tendrils of fear that threatened to take root within her. Mark, the group's self-proclaimed skeptic, regaled them with tales of scientific explanations and logical reasoning, his voice laced with an undercurrent of bravado that sought to dispel the growing unease that pervaded the cabin. John, his typically jovial demeanor marred by a subtle furrow in his brow, listened intently to Mark's attempts at rationalizing the inexplicable, his mind grappling with the lingering remnants of Sarah's unsettling encounter. Emily, the quiet observer of the group, seemed to retreat into herself, her gaze darting nervously toward the cabin's darkened windows as though searching for some semblance of reassurance amidst the encroaching night. A distant howl, its mournful cry carrying with it an air of desolation that seemed to transcend the boundaries of the forest, punctuated the stillness, causing the group to fall into an uneasy silence. Sarah, her thoughts still plagued by the fleeting figure that had appeared before her, felt the weight of its gaze settle upon her once more, its intensity seeming to pierce through the very fabric of her consciousness. A sudden draft, cool and biting, swept through the cabin, causing the flames of the dying fire to sputter in protest as though resisting the encroaching darkness that sought to consume them. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as a shadow, elongated and indistinct, seemed to materialize along the far wall, its edges blending seamlessly into the surrounding gloom. "John," his voice a hesitant whisper that seemed to resonate with the very essence of the night itself, voiced the question that had lingered on the tip of their collective consciousness. "Did you see that?" he asked, his words barely more than a breath that hung suspended in the air. The group, their gazes fixated upon the shadowed apparition that loomed before them, felt a collective shiver race down their spines, its icy touch leaving behind a trail of prickling unease that seemed to crawl along their skin. Sarah, her resolve warring with the burgeoning fear that threatened to consume her, took a tentative step forward, her voice steadying as she attempted to confront the enigmatic specter that had chosen to reveal itself to them. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice quivering slightly despite her attempts to convey a sense of unwavering determination. The shadowed figure, its edges blurred and insubstantial, seemed to undulate in response to her inquiry, its form appearing to shift and contort as though influenced by an unseen force that defied all logical explanation. A hushed whisper, barely discernible yet laden with an undeniable weight of anguish, reverberated through the cabin, sending a chill racing down their spines. Emily, her typically reserved demeanor giving way to a subtle tremor that seemed to overtake her frame, pressed herself closer to the group, her eyes wide with a mixture of trepidation and fascination as she strained to discern the source of the haunting utterance. The air within the cabin seemed to congeal into an oppressive miasma of fear and uncertainty, its weight bearing down upon the group with an unrelenting intensity that threatened to suffocate their very spirits. The shadowed figure, now a palpable presence that loomed at the periphery of their vision, exuded an aura of malevolence that seemed to seep into the very foundations of the cabin, its influence stretching far beyond the confines of their understanding. Sarah, her voice a shaky yet determined refrain that pierced through the suffocating silence, called out once more to the enigmatic specter that seemed to defy all rational explanation. "What do you want?" she implored, her words quivering in the frigid air as she grappled with the visceral fear that threatened to consume her. The figure, its presence an imposing manifestation of the darkness itself, remained silent, its form pulsating with an ethereal energy that seemed to resonate with the primal forces that lay dormant within the heart of the forest. A sudden gust of wind, laden with the weight of whispered secrets and forgotten memories, swept through the cabin, extinguishing the last remaining embers of the dying fire and plunging the group into an impenetrable veil of darkness. Panic, raw and unbridled, seized hold of their senses, their frantic attempts to discern their surroundings met with only the enveloping embrace of an all-consuming blackness that seemed to devour their very thoughts. Emily's voice, barely more than a tremulous whisper that seemed to tremble on the edge of hysteria, broke through the suffocating silence. "We need to leave," she urged, her words a desperate plea that hung suspended in the frigid air. Mark, his voice laced with a tinge of uncertainty that belied his earlier bravado, fumbled for the flashlight that lay discarded on the nearby table, its feeble beam casting elongated shadows that danced along the walls in a macabre display of light and darkness. As the group scrambled to gather their belongings and make their way to the cabin's entrance, a low, guttural growl seemed to resonate from the very foundations of the earth itself, its reverberations sending a tremor that raced through their bones. Sarah, her heart pounding in her chest, cast a fleeting glance over her shoulder, her breath catching in her throat as she beheld the shadowed figure now looming just beyond the threshold of their refuge. Its form, now endowed with a spectral presence that seemed to transcend the confines of the material world, exuded an undeniable aura of malevolence that radiated outward with an intensity that threatened to consume all in its path. Sarah, her voice trembling yet resolute, spoke the words that seemed to echo through the very depths of her being. "We won't be your prey," she declared, her defiance a beacon of unwavering determination that seemed to pierce through the encroaching darkness. With a collective surge of courage that belied the encroaching terror, the group made their way out into the night, their path illuminated by the feeble beam of the flashlight that served as their only tether to the world of the living. The woods, now cloaked in an impenetrable shroud of darkness, seemed to encroach upon their every step, its gnarled branches reaching out like phantom fingers that sought to ensnare them within their suffocating embrace. Sarah, her senses heightened by the palpable weight of the encroaching malevolence, led her friends through the winding path that led away from the cabin, their footsteps a hurried staccato that echoed through the silent night. The distant howl, now a mournful chorus that seemed to reverberate through the very depths of the forest, followed them like an unrelenting harbinger of despair, its echo serving as a chilling reminder that some terrors are best left undisturbed in the depths of the night.